She wasn't just beautiful on the outside. She was beautiful on the inside too. She was very down to earth. She wasn't just beautiful on the outside. She was beautiful on the inside too. She was very down to earth, very real, fun. She loved being a mom. And it was the perfect family. My wife, Ruth, my son, Jeffrey, and my daughter, Julia. Jeffrey was a great student. He was the valedictorian. And I'm lucky to have a son like him, and I'm lucky to have a daughter like Little Miss America. And then one day, something went horribly wrong.
911, where's your emergency? My wife, she's like in the garage. There's blood everywhere.
On May 27, 2011, my sister Ruth was found murdered in her garage. She was struck with a board somewhere between 12 and 14 times, and then she was stabbed in the neck 16 times. I never looked at the pictures. I couldn't. I don't want that memory of my sister.
The injuries were so excessive, we knew that there was some type of a rage, that we felt that it was something that was personal.
And he hit her in the back of the head. This was an angry killing. It was the result of years of things that had built up living with a difficult person.
Jeff told me that his mother was storing knives in her headboard.
Ruth had been violent with both of the children.
I believe my sister was very victimized by her family.
Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors and in someone's home. The family was not the family that they appeared to be.
The police asked me who killed my sister, and I said Bernie Pine.
To have people think that you could do it is the most disgusting and debilitating thought that you can have.
And then when they started pointing at your son.
That's even more ludicrous. Jeffrey could never hurt his mother. There's just no way.
It's a tragic story. You feel like this could be made up, but it's
a savagely murdered suburban wife and mother, her husband and son, the prime suspects. Even for a couple of hard-bitten detectives like Dave Hendrick and Greg Glover, this was a tough one.
We take no joy in this case. I mean, this was a brutal case that literally is destroying a family.
It started as a love story. Bernie Pine says he was smitten the minute he saw a fresh-faced farm girl named Ruth walk across the room during his senior year in high school.
I said, "You are beautiful. We need to go out." And she said, just get out of here.
But you were relentless.
I called her up about every couple months. And on the one occasion, she goes, "Yes, I will." We were actually married less than 10 months later.
They settled in suburban Detroit and eventually had 2 kids, Jeffrey, and 10 years later, Julia.
These pictures don't lie. I mean, there were many, many years that were not just normal, but they were wonderful. Ruth was a wonderful woman, wonderful mom, and wonderful wife. Lots of happy times.
But Bernie says nearly 20 years into the marriage, their lives took a very dark turn.
I looked at her and I could just tell that there was something wrong. Then I noticed that she didn't sleep, and I asked her, I said, "Have you had trouble sleeping?" She goes, "Yeah, I haven't slept in 8 days." And that's when we knew that there was something drastically wrong.
Ruth was eventually diagnosed as bipolar with psychotic features.
As the illness progressed, what was her mental state like?
She would actually think of things like that there were listening devices in the house. In fact, one time she actually thought there was a tracking device in her bloodstream.
She grew increasingly paranoid, says Bernie, even stashing knives in the headboard of their bed. She was prescribed antipsychotic drugs, but she refused to take them.
She explained it to me that she believed that all medication was a form of sorcery and that she wasn't going to take it.
Despite Ruth's illness, Bernie says, the children managed to excel. Julia in ballet, Jeffrey on the basketball court and in the classroom.
And he was top of his class.
Oh yeah. He was the valedictorian, and he was actually one of the top 3 recruits in the honors program at U of M Flint.
All that while holding down 2 jobs and caring for Julia when his mom was too ill. You can see the toll it took on Julia from this heartbreaking drawing she made when she was just 8. Ruth's sister, Linda Jarvie.
Somebody had to, be there and take care of the family. Jeff had to be the guy there to pick up the pieces.
After a vicious cycle on and off meds, in and out of hospitals, things turned violent in 2010.
She'd been off her medication, she hadn't been sleeping, she was just miserable. And I said, Ruth, just please take your medication. After she got through telling me basically no, Jeffrey came in the room and she launched out of the bed and grabbed his throat and tried to hit him.
And Jeffrey never fought back?
Never.
Why not?
He's a tender soul. He's not a fighter. He's a loving son.
The police were called to the scene, says Detective Hendrick.
She was, in fact, arrested for domestic violence.
I called Bernard Pine to the stand.
Ruth spent over 2 weeks in jail, time Bernie and Jeffrey used to petition the court to force her to take her medicine.
I don't want her to have to take medicine either, but it just seems like when she doesn't, all kinds of bad things happen.
Ruth, sitting there on the right, was sent to the hospital for 23 days. But when she returned home, she once again refused to take her meds.
We loved Ruth, but it was getting old. I actually went to the attorney, and I had done everything but serve Ruth the papers.
Divorce papers?
Divorce papers. As much as I loved her, I just couldn't take it anymore.
There was something else. Bernie had met a woman, Renee Janelle, the manager of a local GNC store.
Somehow, the relationship escalated, and when it was all said and done, we were very close.
Ruth caught Bernie and his lover having dinner at a local restaurant. For Bernie, the final straw. That night, he asked Ruth for a divorce.
And she said, Bernie, I'll do whatever it takes to save my marriage and my family. When she said that to me, I said, okay, that means you must take your medication, and you must let me go to the doctor with you so that we can work with it and get the levels right.
And did she?
She did.
So the Pine household was a happy household in the spring of 2011?
We were at the best place that we had been in a long time.
But before the spring was over, 51-year-old Ruth Pine would be found lying in a pool of her own blood here on her garage floor, so badly beaten that her skull was cracked open.
I don't want to think about what my sister had to go through in the final moments of her life. I really don't. You hope that she was unconscious and knocked out, early. You don't want to go there. It's too painful.
But she did think about who did it and wasted no time telling the police.
The police asked me who killed my sister, and I said Bernie Pine. He's a violent person. I'm afraid of him.
And Linda says so was her sister, at least till Jeffrey was born.
There was always a sense that Ruth was afraid of her situation with Bernie, and she left him a few times to come live with me.
Bernie denies ever harming Ruth and says she never stayed with Linda during their marriage. But he does admit he had a wild streak in his youth.
I was a little bit of trouble back then, a little rough around the edges.
He was once arrested for putting a guy in a coma during a bar fight, but was acquitted of felony assault. Bernie insists those days are long gone. Still, he knew it didn't look good.
So there was a point where you felt like you were a suspect?
Well, I'm a husband of a mentally ill woman who had had an affair within the last 6 months. Yes.
What was it like living under that cloud of suspicion?
Very uncomfortable.
How so? Did you feel like everyone was watching you?
Well, in the first place, as a husband, to have your wife brutalized like this is the most painful and humiliating thing that can happen to any person. And then to have people think that you could do it is the most disgusting and debilitating thought that you can have.
But it turned out that Bernie had an ironclad alibi, backed by his boss and 4 witnesses. He was at a retirement lunch for one of his buddies at work.
It took a couple days, but we were able to actually confirm Bernie's alibi, and pretty much rule him out as a suspect at that point.
Bernie started calling Detective Glover, sharing information and helping out however he could.
I wanted to be part of finding out who did this to my wife.
The two men developed a close rapport, but it was not destined to last.
It came to a point to where Bernie flat out asked us, he said, I want to know, in your mind, who the monster is that committed this crime. And I actually said to Bernie, I said, I'm not sure you want us to tell you that. And he said, I want to know who the monster is in this case. And I said, Bernie, your son is the one that killed your wife.
In October 2011, 5 months after his mother was found bludgeoned and stabbed to death, 21-year-old Jeffrey Pine was arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
And I'm a better suspect in any day than Jeffrey could ever be. I was the one that was trapped in a marriage. When you look at this, you know that with a mentally ill woman. I mean, looking at it from the outside, I'm a logical suspect. There's no doubt about it. Jeffrey could never hurt his mother. There's just no way.
Counsel, you may all be seated.
Nobody wants to believe that somebody like Jeff is capable of this type of a crime. The person that everybody thought was the perfect kid on the inside wasn't as perfect as what they were seeing on the outside.
When detectives Greg Glover and Dave Hendrick received a call for assistance on May 27, 2011, they could not have imagined what was awaiting them.
Multiple puncture wounds to her neck. It appeared to be multiple wounds to her head. There's rage, there's violence there. I mean, that's indicative of some sort of personal relationship between the victim and the killer.
I've been doing this for almost 25 years, and this was probably one of the worst crime scenes that I had seen.
It was an unsuspecting Bernie who discovered the gruesome scene when he arrived home after picking up his daughter from school.
So what happened when you came home?
Julia and I got out of the car. We parked right here, walked around the back of the house, and I saw Ruth's arm. Luckily, Julia didn't go inside.
And she was right in the doorway.
Yeah, she was actually up against the door.
Bernie ran from the house before Julia could fully see what happened, calling out to neighbors and calling 911.
911, where's your emergency? My wife, she's like in the garage. There's blood everywhere. I don't know what's going on.
Police arrived within a few minutes, but Ruth was already dead, viciously beaten with an object and repeatedly stabbed.
I remember there was blood everywhere.
As police investigated the scene, Bernie called Jeffrey, who had started his shift at 3 o'clock that afternoon, working at Spicer Orchards.
First time I called him, no answer. Second time, I said, Jeffrey, you need to come home.
Did you tell him why?
I did not tell him why.
And when Jeffrey got to the house, what happened?
That's when I told him that Mom was dead.
Did he ask you what happened?
I don't remember the conversation. I was pretty. I was in a bit of shock.
When Jeffrey arrived home, he found his father and sister being consoled in the back seat of an ambulance. It was there that EMS workers noticed and bandaged blisters on Jeffrey's hands, which he said developed after lifting a large pallet at work.
When I had heard the story that he gave about how he'd injured those hands on a pallet, I was suspicious of it. As a teenager in high school, I worked in a feed store, and I'd moved hundreds of wooden pallets and had never came up with an injury even remotely close to that, nothing more than a sliver.
I've seen those blisters on him, and usually it's from shoveling and raking and that type of thing. I don't know if those were new blisters or old blisters. They didn't look like new blisters to me. They looked, to me, the way I look at it, looked like old blisters that he'd actually ripped the skin off, throwing the pallet, which would make perfect sense to me. Blisters don't make a murderer.